Hi, everybody. I'm Kari Anderson. Very proud to be here. With Vermont Public, I lead our audience and community team, and we have just been so thrilled and delighted to be partnering with StoryCorps and bringing StoryCorps to this amazing community of Brattleboro. Hi, everybody out there in Radioland, as we say, and just need to thank our members, our donors. We can put on events like this thanks to the generosity of our statewide community. So if you are not a donor, think about it. Also, many, many thanks our local sponsors for this event, Rhodes Scholar and Landmark College. Thank you very much for your support. And at a time when, deep listening and empathy and sharing and celebrating stories is just more needed than ever. A few more thanks to folks who have just made this visit so special. Aaron Scragg and Kate Traskis of downtown Brattleboro. Star Latronica of the Brooks Memorial Library. John Potter, Town of Brattleboro. Thank you. And thank you very much to the Latches Hotel and Theater for your generosity. All right, without further ado, Toya Dawkins.
Hello, everyone. My name is Toya Dawkins, and I am the site manager for StoryCorps, and I would like to welcome you to our Brattleboro listening session. Can we all give one another a round of applause for showing up for yourselves today? So we have the lovely honor of being able to travel the country and hear stories from people from all walks of life. And driving here into Brattleboro, coming into the community, we definitely felt so welcomed. So I just want to say thank you for your love and hospitality, your recommendations for water holes to visit because it's extremely hot here in Brattleboro, but also showing up for yourselves and recognizing that you have a story to tell, also recommending your friends, your neighbors, and just anyone to come in and share their stories. That shows how much you love and value yourself and your community. So I just want to thank you all for just loving on yourselves and your community in such a way that the rest of the country and anyone who chooses to listen can really just see how special Brattleboro is as well. So just thank you for that. So, for any of you who have had the lovely opportunity of stepping into our Airstream and recording a story, you know that the Airstream is a very special place. When you first come into the Airstream, you'll have a special session with one of my facilitators and myself, who I will introduce a little later. But when you come into the booth, our goal is to make sure that you feel comfortable and that you understand the process of what it is that you're doing. A lot of people, when they share their stories, sometimes they feel as though that their stories don't hold a lot of weight and they have no value. But what we've come to recognize, the more that we share our stories, we recognize how we're more alike than different, and it helps to create a stronger fabric within the community. And so when you come into the booth, we first want to make sure that you're comfortable, you understand the process, and we explain the entire process so you're not wondering what's next. I don't have any of the youth that I had inside the booth, but you know how this works. So what I would like to do, so you're not wondering what's next, is to kind of just give you an overview on how this will work, okay? So first, I'll give a little special thanks to our sponsors once again. Then we'll talk a little bit about who StoryCorps is, because I know that all of you haven't had the opportunity of stepping inside the booth, but I want to treat this listening session as if you were inside the booth to kind of encourage you to either go online and record your story, or look out for us when we return sometime in hopefully the near future, maybe. And so I just really want to make sure that you feel comfortable, and any of our lovely participants of whom we will be sharing their audio, you feel comfortable speaking up a little later in the session. Is that okay? All right. So I would like to thank our lovely sponsors. Thank you so much to Vermont Public for being willing to work with StoryCorps. You have been extremely supportive. As I stated, the town, I've been corrected several times, the town of Brattleboro has been just so loving, and so haven't you, making sure that we have everything that we need, and we greatly appreciate you. Definitely thank Landmark College and Rhodes Scholar for showing up, making sure that we have everything that we needed, and we feel supported as well. All right. So now we get to tell a little bit of the history of StoryCorps. So on October 23rd of 2003, StoryCorps launched with a recording booth in Grand Central Terminal in New York City. It served as an experiment to see how people would respond if invited to record meaningful conversations with someone in their lives. This invitation resonated, and since then, 500,000 Americans have recorded StoryCorps conversations for our archive in the Library of Congress. What started as a booth in a train station has become the largest single collection of human voices ever gathered. And so now the lovely town of Brattleboro is part of that collection. In the 20 years since the start of StoryCorps, we have left our booth in NYC and ventured out to communities across the United States with our mobile tour. Our mobile tour started in 2005 in an effort to democratize oral history and let more people coast to coast participate through partnerships with local NPR member stations, much like Vermont Public. We're able to get the word out and get connected to the community and share more stories both locally and nationally. This year was our very first time here in Brattleboro, so thank you very much. So here in Brattleboro, we only recorded for 19 days, but we're able to record 96 conversations. I would like to highlight that you all had hardly any no-shows. Everyone was incredibly punctual. Everyone was ready to share their story, but that also speaks to who you are as individuals and how tight-knit your community is. So what do we do with the single largest collection of human voices ever gathered? We create an online archive and make our archive more accessible. It currently contains over 325,000 conversations. Our podcasts, weekly broadcasts, and animations share pieces of these lovely conversations more broadly, giving us the opportunity to peer inside the lives of others and experience their personal stories. The opportunity to listen and to hear how others have walked through the world can be extremely powerful, challenging the way that we see others and even unraveling hard truths that we always assume about others. So, what we're going to do is take a listen.
I wasn't very nice. If I make a mistake, my mother, she made me apologize. In our custom, when you apologize to your mother, you have to bring a cup of tea and say, "I'm sorry." But I purposely dropped that hot cup of tea on my mother's lap. And I wasn't a good student. I always lied to get out of school because a lot of boyfriends after me. That time I was still young. I was not bad looking then. So what else? Hurry, hurry. I want to go home.
How'd you meet Grandpa?
I was a training nurse in a hospital. He was there for hemorrhoids operation. So when your grandpa see me, your grandpa keep on asking me to get married. And I said, "I don't like you. You have bald-headed." I didn't like him because he's ugly. But one thing about your grandpa, he's very smart. That's it. No more questions.
Okay.
Just a couple more questions?
Short one.
Short ones.
Short ones. Tell me about working at Bloomingdale's. What did you do?
You know what I do. I'm not going to tell you.
No, you have to. You have to talk about it.
I am a detective. I got a very famous designer. I better not mention her name. She stole a dress, $3,000 some dollar. So I walked out the store. I said, would you like to pay me that dress? She said, do you know who I am? I said, yeah, you're a thief. So that's my life.
Do you have any regrets?
No, what should I regret? No, I think I'm old enough to do whatever I would like. And that's it.
So I have a question for you. What stands out to you about this conversation and what makes it so distinctive? Now, this is interactive. This is not a rhetorical question. So if you would like to respond, just please raise your hand. Anyone? Yes?
That she seemed to be a reluctant interviewee, but they still managed to get some stories out of her by their patients.
I like that. Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else? Yes. So the sense of humor on both sides, definitely, definitely. Anyone else? Right up front, yes. Her frank response? All right. Definitely. I think all of you are correct. So the StoryCorps model is a conversation typically between two people, which captures the spirit of the storyteller and the essence of relationships between the two participants. Every now and again, we do have the honor of having 3 participants in the booth. There are some of you in here that I recognize, and we've had 3-person conversations, but typically it is a 2-person conversation, and every now and again, we do have a solo. Sorry about that. All right. Fundamental to our mission is to build an oral history of the United States that gives a fuller, more complex perspective of American life and the voices and the terms of those who are living those lives. Many of these perspectives have been overlooked and downright ignored by the historical record. The opportunity for people to tell stories themselves and to get them on record can be as powerful as the experience of listening. Of course, finding these stories doesn't always happen on its own, so StoryCorps has wonderful partnerships and with dedicated community organizations that are crucial to this effort. The support of these organizations in this particular audio piece that you're about to hear is Magic City Acceptance Center in Birmingham, Alabama, which helped us to find and preserve and share Glenda's story. And many more organizations right here in Brattleboro have helped to make sure that we are documenting the rich stories from across Brattleboro. So I'm about to play the story of Glenda.
Laurie knew how to tease me without my being offended. And there was something about the way she would smile that, I can still see very vividly. She was the first person I really, truly loved. But I grew up in the 40s in a small rural community. There were certainly no role models of what it means to love someone of the same sex. So I didn't know how to understand that. My high school sweetheart, he proposed to me. And I thought at that time, that's what a woman did. She got married. And it didn't take me very long to realize that I'd made a mistake. So he and I decided to get a divorce. During all of this time, Laurie and I had stayed in touch. I knew that I loved her deeply. She said, well, I have very strong feelings for you too, but most of all, I want to have children. She met a man who had asked her to marry him. Then she got pregnant, and she said, if it's a little girl, I'm going to name her after you. Well, it turned out it was a little boy, and I was relieved. It really would have been excruciatingly painful if she had had a little girl named after me. Somewhere along the way, she said, if I outlive my husband and you don't have a partner, perhaps we can grow old together. And somehow that made it all right. But then Laurie got cancer, and she didn't live very long, and I did not get to see her again. It didn't hit me so much until I turned 60, and I began to really think about old age, and this was the time that Laurie and I were going to have, and it didn't happen. There are certain kinds of love that never die, but I don't regret at all our time together. It is where I learned that I could love, and I could be loved in that complete sense of the word.
Now, there's definitely a noticeable difference between the tone of those two stories, but that's the beauty of being in the booth. You can come into the booth and you can laugh, you can cry, you can have some serious conversations, and if you've ever been in one of my sessions, I always tell you have the option of having fun. Fun can look different, even if it's difficult. Expressing yourself can be really difficult, especially when it's reminiscing on stories much like this. But it's an opportunity that I'm glad that each of you who've decided to step into the booth or that wanted to step into the booth or considering stepping into the booth have, and it's a beautiful experience. So next, what I would like to highlight, we've had several community partners. So if you've been a community partner and you had the opportunity to record, could you all stand, please? Thank you. We would just like to thank you for your trust and your dedication to your community and love for your community, and just being willing to be a partner with making sure that these beautiful voices are heard here in the town of Brattleboro. So next, this is what you all have been waiting for. I know you all have been waiting for me to kind of get quiet so you can hear your fellow neighbors and friends. And so next we will have some special listens. We have 4 special listens, 3 which Vermont Public has cut, and then we have a facilitator selection. And so I will begin.
So Marlon, you and I are both dads.
Yes.
We've been dadding for a while.
8 years to be exact.
8 years.
All of my connections, because I was a stay-at-home dad with my oldest son, were a bunch of moms who I love, and they're part of my OG mom group.
I knew about you in the community. You just have such a big personality, and you're on stage, and black men stick out in,
we should
in Vermont.
That.
Yeah, you are. You
yes,
look black to me.
I am black.
I remember seeing you a few times, but it wasn't until that day when we saw each other like twice. It was just like, oh, this is fate telling us that we should be friends and we should dismantle the patriarchy together.
Yes, I think of that moment like, when you buy a car and it's like, I'm going to get this car, and then you see that car all over the place, I think after that day when we saw each other the twice, I saw you all the time after that.
No, you're totally right, because it was that summer. And then that fall, because you and I were talking just about hey, we have some dads who are interested, people are looking for connections, they're looking to have fun. What can we do?
Right.
And I remember we started this kind of slow process, talking to people and just kind of seeing what already existed, just really wanting to build a community for dads, a place where dads could connect with each other and feel comfortable and safe with each other. were like, let's start something. Let's create this group. And so that was the birth of Dad Guild.
Right, a Facebook group.
Yeah, so it was like a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And
we would just throw events in there. Meet at this playground at 10 o'clock on Saturday. Boom. Like, that was it.
yeah, but it was like early on too, because the concept of men and mask identifying caregivers coming together to like connect, especially connect over being a dad,
Right.
was just like not a thing. But we were like, no, this is gonna be a thing.
Right.
And like we would do these, we'd do these play groups, and like sometimes it would just be like you and me showing up.
Right, with our kids, with our 2 kids. I mean, I want to go back to what you said earlier. You said like there was this nervousness around connecting, right? And I think that's like what I've learned being part of Dad Guild. Like there's this like hesitation to want to connect, and I'm glad that we've been able to break that barrier down for a lot of dads in the last 6 years. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Officially became a nonprofit back in 2019, and here we are 5 years later. We started out with $0. We had a volunteer board.
The three of us,
and we had like a couple dozen dads awkwardly meeting up at playgrounds. And 5 years later, we're going into fiscal year 24-25. We have a budget over $300,000. We have just about 3 full-time staff equivalents. We have a network of about 1,000 dads and mask identifying caregivers across the state of Vermont.
At least 10 programs a month.
Yeah, there's we're getting like 75 to 100 different dads participating every month, and it's been so fun. And I think back to those early days because people are like, how did you create this? How did you start it? And I was like, stumbling a lot and just but just sticking with it.
Yep. What's really important for me as I establish these values into my kids, like you have to have trusting relationships. And so because we all as fathers get so deep and vulnerable with each other, our kids see that, and they have they have 12 trusted adults who are males in their lives, which is super, not super important, but it's great. I'm grateful for.
Well, I think it is super important. When I think about our kids have been with it since the beginning, and it's been so amazing where, these kids during their developmental years, the norm is going to playgrounds and playgroups with a bunch of dads, and their dads saying, I'm going to go talk with other dads and about how I'm doing, and they're my friends and I need them for support. It's so powerful to be modeling that at such a young age.
Yep. And for me, I have to model like not only being a dad, but I have to model being a black dad. And so having my kids see, that here's a group, and then here in Vermont, right, every black person I walk by, they're like, Dad, is that your friend? I'm like, yep, that's my friend. That's my friend. How do you know him? We just know each other. To build community, especially with people who look like them, people who don't look like them, because these relationships are so important, especially when we can be real and go below the surface.
All right. So I definitely want to thank Keegan and Marlon for their contribution. And so we will listen to the next piece of audio.
I'm Atlas. I'm a trans guy who's just finished my first year in college in upstate New York. I'm passionate about mental health and specifically mental health advocacy, more specifically in teenagers and youth.
I am a proud, fierce mama ally and totally inspired by a kid named Atlas to change my professional mission because of my personal experiences and my journey. A lot of people ask us, right, Atlas, you're a mom ally and you're a queer son. What do you actually even share in common? Do you actually have anything in common? What do you think? What do we have in common?
I always want to know why, and you'd always help me understand why or figure out why not. Or so curiosity, and even more than that, brainstorming a hard problem.
As a little kid, you would always come into a room and say, I really don't like the way this works. 6 years old, you don't like the way it works. And then we would have to brainstorm. I guess it's that shared curiosity, that shared impatience with when something doesn't seem right. When don't you feel that you are not most authentic?
I immediately go to the various treatment centers that I ended up at. The first one made me feel like parts of my identity were being stripped away, and the option to find my own identity was not there.
When we really got inspired was when we started meeting parents like us, basically struggling to support their kids, whether they were trans or non-binary themselves in terms of being a parent. What we did share was a real concern with how to support our kid. Why do our kids have to wait until college to find community, to find their chosen family, if you will? When we were looking for, a therapeutic school for you, I couldn't believe there wasn't a school anywhere that had only LGBTQ plus teens that identified themselves in that community. Strangely enough, we thought the easiest thing would be to start a school, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of ridiculous, right? What will the future look like when there's schools like this that say, we're proudly queer, and it's okay, and it's great?
Yeah.
What's the future look like when that happens?
Well, I think about how good are these teenagers going to feel to be able to know that they're safe, and that they, not only are they safe, but they're understood, and they're accepted. How is that going to make them feel? And I'm just excited to hear those stories from them, and maybe not all of them will feel exactly that way immediately, but I hope that they're able to feel as understood as they deserve to be.
So thank you, Atlas and Allison. Next up.
So I thought we would talk a little bit about your life, your 85 years here.
Oh, I had a great childhood. I had 2 brothers and a sister, and a great mother and father, and lived outside of New York City. It was just fun. It was the 50s. That's all I have to say. It was the 50s. Everything was wonderful. We had great neighbor kids. We played all the time, all summer long, and kids were all around. So
it was the 50s, but it was also the 40s, right? Because you were young during World War II.
Yes.
What was that like?
My dad was in the Navy. My mother had 3 children. And we saved everything. We saved string. We saved bacon fat. We saved gum wrapper, tin foil. And she took it down to every store that would take them back for the war effort. And we had Victory Garden with our neighbors. And we put the curtains down at night in case it was like an air raid warning. And she had a flag there. It was 1 flag and 1 star, because she had 1 person in the war.
Do you think it was hard for Grandma?
I think it was very hard for her.
Did you ever see her cry about it?
Never. But she always we would take turns sleeping in her bed at night when my dad was gone. And that was, I think, was good for her, but it was also good for us, too.
When is the first time you came to Vermont?
We came in 1954. My parents found an ad somewhere for a cabin up in Newport, which is on the Canadian border, and it was right on Lake Memphremagog, and it was, I think, $100 a week. And there was no interstate, so it took us 2 days to get up there. And we stopped at Brattleboro. and we stopped on Western Avenue, and there was a wonderful little inn, a couple there, an old couple had no children, and they took people in, and they took us in. And I still remember them fondly. I see their house is gone. The interstate took their house, but I can see them, and I just love Vermont, and my parents love Vermont, and so it's always had a special, and I don't know what it is. I do not know what it is. Get over that border on 91, and there's something in the air. It happens. I know I'm home, even though I'm not home. There's something in this state has that I've never seen in any other state we've ever lived in or visited.
So we have a photo of you when you're 14.
Yes.
And you are on a beach towel.
Yes.
And you are looking very beautiful. And you're with a young man, and you're playing cards, and there's a radio there. Can you tell me a little bit about that beautiful photo we have?
That was the first time I met your later-to-be father, my soon-to-be husband, and his parents came up every year, and so we were the same age, and we were playing, and we just, I still have the deck of cards. So it was a joyous summer that I met someone I really liked. 56, he graduated from high school. 57, I graduated from high school, and I'd go down when I graduated from high school, and I'd go down and visit him and stuff like that. And then I met people at Yale, and he met people, and we just sort of forgot each other. And until one fall game at the Yale Bowl, Penn was playing Yale, and I went with my boyfriend, and I saw this guy literally rolling down the Yale Bowl, which is really a steep place, and it turned out to be your dad. It wasn't your dad then, but he was my boyfriend previously. So I ditched my boyfriend, and I picked up with Dad, and then that never stopped from then.
So you thought that was a good look?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was a great look, right? He's drunk out of his mind. He's falling all over. He took me to one of the houses at Yale to eat dinner. He said, "You're going to love the ham." It was roast beef. You know, he had no idea what he was doing, but there was something about him. I just attached to him.
So he was down at college at Penn.
Yes.
And you were going to school.
Going to, in New Haven. I was going to New Haven Teachers College at that point.
And what did you choose to study?
Special ed. I liked special ed, and that's what I ended up doing for 23 years or so.
So you and Dad reunite when he's rolling down the Yale Bowl.
Yep.
And then for the next couple of years, you went down to
Penn. Yeah.
You were getting serious. I mean,
very
in those days, people got married pretty young.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you were.
Yeah.
Were you guys already talking about marriage?
Yeah, we were. And then he went into the Army Reserves, and I finished up college, and then we got back together, and he asked my dad, sure, fine, and because he knew him for his whole life, and then we decided to get married, and we did. Gordon was just changing jobs. He had been working for a publishing company, and he left that to take was a college traveling job out in Kansas City. It just was a great place to start out. They were so friendly, and I wasn't used to that. I'd go to the grocery store with a baby carriage, and they'd take my food out for me and put it in the car. And oh, come on, I'm being an Eastern. I thought, what are these people doing? I was kind of worried. I thought, oh my God, they're just being nice people. And they were genuinely nice people.
So you were in Kansas City for a couple of years, and then
1 year.
Just 1 year.
Yeah. We got transferred to Madison, Wisconsin, which is even better than Kansas City.
And so why did you leave Madison?
We actually felt landlocked. And even though there are beautiful lakes there, we've always lived on the East Coast. Connecticut, New York, somewhere on the East Coast. And our families were all there, and we just didn't feel like we wanted to be that far away from them and have kids grow up that far away. So he quit his job, I quit my job, and we moved back east, and we moved in with my mom for a while. Dad got a great job working and doing surveys.
what you've always said to me is that it was unsustainable because Dad was going into New York, and he went to grad school and fell behind in his studies, and
he could never catch up.
Right.
And we said, this is not worth it. So we nixed that, and I think around that time we decided to give you kids to our moms for a weekend, and we were just going to hit the road and take a long weekend and go away somewhere and just think. And we did that. We went up to Manchester, Vermont, and after we decompressed, we said, why don't we move up here? This seems like a really nice place. We love the state. It's beautiful. There's the pace we can live with. And we came home and we thought about it really well. And we decided we were going to do that. And we had no jobs. So what we did is Daddy went back, and that time they wanted men to be elementary school teachers. So he went back to college and got a degree for teaching. I already had a degree. So I think we applied to Lebanon, and they took me, and I said, well, I'll go if you'll take my husband. And they needed a fourth grade teacher, and they took him. So we both had jobs.
So you've lived in Vermont now how many years?
50 years, majority of my life. Mm-hmm. And I am so happy to be here. I would never move for anything.
You did a lot of fun things. I mean, we had sheep, we had pigs, you made candles, jam, baskets.
Yeah, but I think it was a good place to bring kids up, I feel. It kept you in Vermont and kept your sister always wanting to come back to Vermont.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you guys moved up.
Yeah.
Did you ever dance to Moonlight in Vermont?
Yes, of course we did. We used to request that. Actually, up in Newport, they had a skating rink out in Derby, and the last song of the night was Moonlight in Vermont. So you're roller skating to that, but we always requested that anywhere we went, and they always played it. Yeah. It's a lovely song.
Yeah.
Great state, interesting politics, fascinating people, beautiful vistas. What else do you want?
Well, thanks for doing this with me, Mom.
Oh, this has been a joy, an absolute joy.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too, Mom.
All right, so for the last piece of audio, it's slightly different. So for those of you who've ever come into the booth and we've given you a full rundown on how the process works, right before you start your audio recording, we have a special half sheet to where you get to introduce yourself, and we tell you that your audio will not be edited when it goes into the Library of Congress, right? And so this audio piece is very unique because every now and again we do have the opportunity to have youth come in. And I know every now and again, people think about youth not really having a lot to share, but every now and again you'll run into youth who have a lot to say. Here in Brattleboro, we had several youth that had a lot to say. And some of the most beautiful, most profound ways. And so what we wanted to do with this particular youth was to highlight their family, and what they wanted to share with the community. Also, I know that I also shared that every now and again we have a 3-person interview, so I wanted to also highlight that. So this is a facilitator pick, and it is raw. So
go for it. Hi, I'm Stephen McQuaid. I'm 34 years old. Today is July 22nd, 2024. We are in Brattleboro, Vermont, and my relationship to Mary is spouse and to Darren is father.
Hi, I'm Mary. I am 34. Today's date is July 22nd, 2024. We are in Brattleboro, Vermont, and I am Stephen's spouse and Darren's parent.
What am I supposed to say? Hi, my name is Darren, and I am 12 years old. Today's date is July 22nd, 2024, and we are in Brattleboro, Vermont. I am the child of the family.
And so we were actually invited here to StoryCorps from an organization that we belong to in Berkshire County in Mass, which is Berkshire Pediatric Palliative Care. It's a really cool organization for kids that have life-limiting illnesses that can range just from slight limitations to extreme limitations. They work with kids that are ambulatory and nonverbal, and kids that are not ambulatory or verbal at all. So they reached out to us and said, hey, we've got this really cool opportunity to come out and let you guys just come talk about your story and anything you really want to talk about. And so we took them up on that, and here we are. We're a member of that organization because my son has what's called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative neuromuscular disease, which means it's progressive. He was diagnosed when he was about 4 years old. We went to go see a doctor because he was having like a global developmental delay. He was late for talking, late for walking, and they're like, hey, let's go get you checked out. And so we went in for just, a typical autism screening, and the neurologist was like, hey, I kind of noticed, his calves are a little big, which is, might be indicative of something else. Let's go get him checked out. So we went to a bunch of doctors, and a week later we got the phone call like, hey, your kiddo has this condition. It's really, really serious. This is what it means for his future. And we've been kind of riding that ride ever since. So, we've got the little peanut here with us in case he wants to talk about it and let anybody know about how he feels about it or talk about it. And obviously, Darren, if you have any questions for me, you're like, hey, can you clarify this for me? Because I don't know how to say this, then we'll do that. But do you remember what it felt like to find out that you had muscular dystrophy?
No, the only thing I really remember is what I've finally learned about the life expectancy. That's the closest thing I can remember.
Okay. And so the life expectancy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy is 18 to 24. There have been cases of kiddos who've lived longer. We were really nice and lucky and received a wheelchair from a friend of a friend whose kiddo was 29, which is definitely much higher. We have a friend with a kiddo right now who is currently 24 and just graduated, I believe, from NYU, New York University. That's correct. And he's living his best life. He's working at Guido's in Great Barrington and stuff and having a blast. So,
Well, that life expectancy is probably going to be different for me because the infusion, right?
Yeah, so they're always coming out with really cool treatments and stuff and new things. Medical technology advances super, super fast, so we're always definitely helpful that, things will change. But, we just don't take any day for granted. We just do the best that we can. And so
I was just wondering if you'd explain the infusion, because I don't really.
Yeah, absolutely. So Darren has an infusion every week, which is through a port that he has, and he just gets to chill and watch cartoons with his traveling nurse, who is a blessing and the funniest and greatest person.
All right, so I want you all to listen to the rest of this conversation because though it started off really somber, Darren got really comfortable and the conversation got incredibly funny. And though his life expectancy, he found out his life expectancy was going to be of a lower age, he has high hopes to continue to live and have a thriving life. And he's encouraging in this particular audio piece others to live a life that's worth living. So I encourage you all, when it's published, to go ahead and listen to it. So next up, what I would like to do, we have lovely viewers on YouTube who may have some questions. I know that you, being here out in the audience, may have some questions. What I would like to do is first introduce my facilitators. so that way you could ask them any questions that you would like. And then we want to turn it back to you in the community. One of the things that we recognize when we come into each community, we do recordings here, but what happens? What's the aftercare after having a wonderful experience like that? And so we want you to interact, ask one another questions. We're gonna ask you questions. We want you all to ask one another questions. And ultimately the goal is to kind of have like a short mixer after this to where you socialize, which I know you all do because I saw you all leaving the booth talking to one another. But we want you to really interact and just really strengthen that bond and continue the conversations well after we're gone. And then who knows, if we're able to come back, we're able to get more stories of other people who are drawn to this community, because we know that love draws in love, and understanding draws in understanding, and diversity draws in more diversity. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do. And so before we get that deep and I release you all to communicate with one another, as you all do so well, I would like to introduce my two facilitators. I do definitely want to thank Mr. Allen. Allen, some of you all met when he came in to make sure that we could keep up with the demand for recordings here. So Allen on National, hopefully you're watching. We want to just thank you so much for your support and making sure that we were able to capture these wonderful voices here in Brattleboro. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Ian, and then we have Sam. All right. Also in the crowd, we have some lovely mics. So if any of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you are watching on YouTube or listening however you choose to listen, please feel free to drop questions inside of the chat. I will ask the facilitators the questions that you pose. And if you have a question for me, I guess I can answer too. I'm not just going to throw it on them. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll have someone bring the mic to you.
Oh, hi there. Just a logistical question about accessing all the other interviews. You go right to StoryCorps, and all our friends and neighbors who recorded are available there online to hear?
So you can access most of these recordings, assuming people are able to release them, on our website, archive.storycorps.org. That is a publicly available website. That's where most of them are stored. You can look them up by name, keyword, location. Usually it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get processed by a recording and archives department. So most of your recordings are getting processed right now, but that's where you can find them.
Another question?
How does it feel to go between all these communities? Do you feel connected traveling so much? Because like you're here for like, I don't know, like a couple months, right?
Sam, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, it really depends. I think we've been to recently a lot larger communities. We came from Pittsburgh and then Charlotte before that. So I think something that's been really special about being in Brattleboro is it does really feel like a community. I feel like we have had the opportunity to really ingrain ourselves in this community, you know, coming to events at the Stone Church, right? Coming, you know, just seeing people in town. Like I see so many like recognizable faces, people I've seen in the booth right now, and I've had conversations with you on the way in. And yeah, there's something really special about Brattleboro in the sense that I think people leaving the booth more often than not know the next people coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot. And I think it's just really cool. I think you really feel the sense of community here. And I think, I'm sure you all feel that as well.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I've listened to StoryCorps for years and years and years, and I love it. Have you ever had a situation where somebody's story just touched your heart so much it changed you? And if so, could you share?
So I've been doing this job for almost a year now. So I've facilitated a ton of different recordings. I think there's a lot of recordings that stick with you. I think the best ones for me leave me with a question. I had a recording when we were in Lafayette, Louisiana, and we had some recordings on, there was a man who was a naturalist, so he was speaking about the Atchafalaya Basin, living and working there, doing oral history work on the water, people who lived in boats in the water, and I think he was in his late 80s, and you could tell that he was just so satisfied by what he had done with his life. But I think the biggest question that I was left with was really, what does a life led by curiosity look like? And I think through this work that I've been able to really do that. I've had so much fun. Yeah.
So we have Mr. Dave Isay. This is our founder. So if you all would like to give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Toya. I was just driving through town and decided to stop by. Surprising these guys. Did you know I was coming?
Someone kind of gave us a
Okay.
hint that you may come through, but it
okay.
wasn't solid.
But I thank you to VPR. Thanks to everybody here. Was anybody in the stories we heard, are they here? Can you stand up if you were in one of the, oh, I recognize you guys. Hi. Thank you so much. You could just wave if you don't understand. But Brattleboro is such a special place to me. I want to point out my cousin Janie Birnbaum Melman and her husband Ira. Janie's father was participant number 1 at StoryCorps, the first interview ever. That was my great uncle Sandy, and this was it was a crazy experiment. We had no idea if it was going to work, and we set up a fake booth in Chinatown in New York City. And Sandy was married to Janie's mom, Bertie, who was she was nuts. She was absolutely crazy. She said she had invented fruit salad, right? Janie says she actually said she was the first person ever to peel grapes, right? And she used to always say, "Kiss my ass in Macy's window." That was like one of her famous sayings. But Sandy was not. She had passed away, and Sandy was just a lovely, quiet, just the sweetest man that ever lived. And the question was, would just a regular person, what would happen in an interview? Like, would he be too shy? What would happen? So we did the first interview, and Sandy talked about the first time he had his first date with Bertie, and how it was after World War II, and she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. And they were supposed to meet on a stoop on 14th Street in Manhattan, and he saw her, and he tried to escape into the building, because what would this beautiful, glamorous woman, Bertie, see in him? This was right after World War II, after he got back from World War II. And he tried to get in the building, and it was locked, and he started crying, and he said, "I often think if that door had been open, it would have destroyed my life." And that was the first interview. And Sandy, he was maybe 90 then, or 80 something, late 80s, and he was still driving, and he used to drive around. It was CDs back then, if you remember what those were. And he would drive around listening to the interview, which was a good sign that StoryCorps was going to work. And here we are, 700,000 conversations later. So thank you all. We're so happy to be in Brattleboro. Thank you to the incredible team. It's great to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. All right, so now it's your turn to talk. All right, so would any of our participants like to talk about their experiences in the booth? Don't be shy. You weren't shy in the booth. Anyone? 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 Oh, so are you ready to mix and mingle? Are we? All right, well, I just want to say thank you so much for being a wonderful town, for accepting us. This photo is when we first rolled into town, and we were doing a media event, and we were getting ready for, what was it? Where's Aaron? Aaron, what was that event? The art walk, right? The gallery walk. So thank you all for just being so kind. And I didn't want to save you all for last, but we want to just thank the Brattleboro Alliance so much for just really just being so supportive. You all made sure we got our mail when we needed a new hard drive to continue to record these stories. You all really just took care of us, made sure that we had everything that we need, and we definitely want to say thank you. We didn't forget about you, I promise. All right, so what I would like to do, because you all are a community, and you all know how to communicate with one another, I want you all to chit-chat, get to know one another some more. Definitely want to say thank you, but I also want to give a shout out to our lovely bar over here. Please come and visit, tip, let's have some fun, communicate with one another, and we just really just want to just thank you for your time and being willing to share your story. So thank you so very much. Miss Amy, do you have anything else that you would like to say before we close out? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Do you have anything else? Okay. All right.